Hi there, and welcome once again to the Joe Roberts podcast. And the subject today is Olympic boxing gender debate. Since I have a lot to say on the topic, I may very well split this podcast into two separate parts. I recently decided that I was going to move away from talking about intersex issues, or was going to talk about other issues other than gender and intersex issues, but this topic has been very much in the news over the past week, and once again I'm uncomfortable with the way the topic is being spoken about and represented, and it's being spoken about in an entirely misleading way. So I thought, I felt compelled to make this podcast. There have been a couple of newspaper articles that I've read on this subject over the past couple of days, and the first one of those entirely misrepresented the subject, and the second one, which I read today, didn't do any much better job. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the second article. It's in the Daily Mail, and so was the other article. So I'm going to briefly read through that article to give you some background, or to give some background for those who are not familiar with this story. So the title of the article is Boxing Row Round 2. Second gender storm as Keir's Olympics pal gets in muddle. Olympics spokesman Mark Adams, best man at Keir Starmer's wedding, was on the ropes yesterday defending the boxing row that has engulfed Paris 2024. After Angela Carini, an Italian woman, quit to save my life following two savage punches from a, quote, biologically male opponent, Mr. Adams said the word female on a passport was enough to let a boxer fight a woman. Another woman boxer previously banned for failing a gender test also won her opening fight at the Olympics yesterday. Taiwan's Lin Yuting, 28, punched her way into the quarter-final, leaving her opponent Sitora Turdybekova in tears. A global backlash was sparked by Thursday's bout in which Algeria's Emayne Khelif, apologies if I'm not pronouncing that right, who previously failed a competition gender test, pummeled Carini so hard the Italian quit after just 46 seconds, protesting it was so unjust. Author J.K. Rowling, Italy's Prime Minister, the UN's envoy on women's safety, and a string of sports stars have condemned the International Olympic Committee for allowing the fight. Rowling said, "A man beating a woman in public for your entertainment isn't sport." Asked about the global storm at a press conference in Paris, the IOC's spokesman admitted that games bosses had found themselves in the middle of a minefield. He added, "Unfortunately, as with all minefields, there is not one simple explanation. Everyone wants a black and white explanation. That does not exist, neither in the scientific community or anywhere else." Mr. Adams, who has warned against a witch hunt against Khelif, is a friend of Sir Keir, calling him my old mate, having gone to school with the Prime Minister. Repeatedly asked yesterday if the boxing match had been safe for women, he said safety is our number one concern. But he then suggested Olympic chiefs were powerless to challenge an athlete suspected of being a different gender, saying they had to trust what it said on their passport. "We have to go on the passport," he added. He said Khelif was born female, was registered female, lived her life as a female, boxed as a female, has a female passport. This is not a transgender case. Khelif was born female but reportedly has differences of sexual development, hitherto known as intersex, a rare medical condition that results in varying genes, hormones and reproductive organs. I'll assess that paragraph later because it's incorrect. After a test on her and also Taiwan's Yu Ting at the World Championships last year, they were both disqualified as biologically male. However, the IOC said these tests were conducted by Russian-controlled officials and were cobblers, allowing both to compete at Paris. Last night, Sally Parkin of campaign group Sex Matters said, "Sex is a material reality. It's not changed by what's written on a piece of paper. If this is the extent of the requirements, it gives no confidence this is a fair fight. night. She added, "It really isn't a minefield. Sex testing is done with a simple cheek swab. Most female athletes wanted it and still do. The IOC need to ask women and listen to the answer." Dr. Emma Hilton, developmental biologist at Manchester University, said, "If there is biology that someone's going to help you punch someone harder because you've got male biology, then it's not just unfair, it's dangerous." So I'm now going to go through various different concerns regarding this story. First thing that I want to pick up on is that a solution on this issue which benefits everyone is being hampered by a complete lack of awareness on this issue. Virtually everybody that I'm listening to talking about this issue is talking about it in completely misguided and sort of way off the track terms, and I'll expand a little bit upon that. When I read the newspaper article on this yesterday, and it was being sort of presented to me as this is a transgender person fighting against a biological woman. It's a biological male who transitioned surgically to female, fighting against a biological woman. I was as sort of taken aback as anybody else, because the sort of impression that the article was given was entirely misleading. Whilst the article did not specifically come out and refer to this person as transgender, it was consistently using that word over and over again. And this is something which keeps happening again and again and again in our society. There is a sustained effort being made to conflate the two with each other, to sort of blur the lines between the two, so that basically the existence of intersex people and what that actually means is increasingly being sort of, how can I put it, erased from society. It's being sort of pushed into the background. It's being minimised or ignored entirely. And people like myself who have differences in sexual development are being viewed as sort of transgender or not being seen at all for what we are. Either way, the article painted a picture of a biological male fighting against a biological female. It painted a picture of an incredibly unfair disadvantage of an extremely highly male/masculine individual overpowering a small helpless female. This was the impression that the article tried to create, and it was entirely misleading, and it was somewhat rectified in the second article, the one that I've just read, but the whole thing has basically been misrepresented. Emain Khalif is purportedly someone with a difference in sexual development, and by the way, there are around 30 of those. There is a dishonesty and misrepresentation of this issue going on, especially by the Daily Mail and in other pockets of the mainstream media as well. It's trying to sort of blur the lines between intersex and trans. It's refusing to acknowledge the existence of intersex people, and the secrecy is not being helped by the athletes themselves refusing to weigh in on this. And this happened with Caster Semenya as well. She refused to acknowledge that there was a difference there. She kept on referring to herself as a woman, whilst everybody else was adamant that she's male, whereas there was a sort of other angle to this, which it seems like nobody is willing to sort of shine a light on, which is, it's a human being who has a difference. It's a human being who has a difference in sexual development, and it's a human being who is biologically and also in certain respects physically androgynous, and there is nothing wrong with that. And can I also say at this point that the issue of everybody discussing this person and talking about this person's biology and talking about what they are or what they aren't also raises issues regarding ethics and compassion. The way that they are being spoken about, particularly in the mainstream media, lacks compassion and lacks humanity and lacks empathy. These athletes are not masculine or feminine, they're androgynous, and this is the issue that's being missed here. And there's a sustained effort being made to try and erase the existence of biological androgyny, hitherto known as intersex, and now being described as differences in sexual development, there is a sustained effort being made to sort of erase this from society and blur the lines between that and trans, seemingly with a view to eventually erasing the existence of people like myself altogether and just lumping us in with transgender people. And I'm sorry, but I'm not accepting that. I had surgeries forced upon me. I am not transgender. And I, in biological terms, am not completely male or completely female. I am an amalgamation of both. That is part of who I am. There are over 30 intersex conditions. There are over 30 differences in sexual development. This should be getting assessed on a case-by-case basis. I agree that it's concerning if somebody who is completely biologically male with absolutely no androgyny present whatsoever is getting into a boxing ring with a biological woman. I agree that that's concerning. But that isn't what's happening here. What's happening here is that somebody who is intersex, somebody who has a difference in sexual development, or intersex people, or whatever the hell you want to call them, that's what's going on. It's not a biological male getting into a boxing ring with a biological woman. It's somebody who's different to the norm, somebody whose biology is a mixture of male and female. But our society seems to increasingly becoming incapable of understanding and detecting nuance and accepting the existence of nuance. I still hear people today who deny the existence of intersex people. It's increasingly being pushed back down into the collective unconscious. There are other forms of nuance which people also seem unable to understand. There are people who deny the existence of bisexuality, for example. There are people who, in fact most of humanity, use the terms black and white to describe two different races, despite the fact that nobody is black and nobody is white. There is a problem in human society in the 21st century with nuance. It seems increasingly incapable of recognising and acknowledging the existence of nuance, and I would say that the existence of intersex people is kind of the apex of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause here and I'm going to make a second part to this podcast, and I hope you can join me for that, and I hope you've enjoyed listening to this or got something useful out of it. Bye for now, and thanks for listening.